President, please be seated. The court is now back in session, and the chamber gives the floor to the defense team for Mr. Nguyen Chia to resume the questioning. You may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. One short follow-up question, Mr. Civil Party, in relation to your uncle Sai. You confirmed that he was also known as Ping, but there were two other names he was known by, and I would like my national colleague to read them to you so that there's no misunderstanding of the pronunciation. Mr. President, I'll be referring to the OCIJ list, E3/10604, English ERN 012222640, and it is number 7765 on the list.
Counsel, allow me to read the names, Mr. President. Thorn, Ping, and Sai.
Do you know, Mr. Civil Party, whether your uncle was also known as Thon?
I have never recognized or heard of that name. I have never heard the name Thorn, but for Piang, yes.
That's fine, thank you, Mr. Civil Party. One last follow-up question on your uncle. Let me refer you to what a witness has said to investigators. That is E3/9610, English ERN. Oh no, it's a question and answer 16, so no need for ERNs. This is what the witness, Ham or Toad, or whatever his name was, said, and let me read it to you. Taping alias Sai was the chief of Sector 1. As far as I know, Sai was a former Deputy Secretary of State of the Ministry of Culture during the Samdech Sihanouk regime. End of quote. Is that correct? Mr. Civil Party, was your uncle Sai at one point in time Deputy Secretary of State of the Ministry of Culture during the Samdech Sihanouk regime?
I do not know about that.
Thank you. Now let me move on to S21 and Prey SAR. Can you tell us what it is that you knew between 75 and 79 about the existence of S21 and Prey SAR?
After I have heard of the name S21 prison, I started to wonder, and I have heard of the name Praisor prison as well, but I do not know what Praisor looks like. As for S21 prison, it was known as Security Center S21. And Mr. Lawyer, regarding the name Hum, in fact, I do not know the name Hum, but Hom. Hom at logistics, not Hum.
I do apologize. Well, following up on this, what did you know at the time about Hom? Did you ever see, for instance, your father or your uncle have contact with Hom?
I do not know about their relationship.
Then that's fine. Let me get back to S21 and Praisar. My question was, did you know in 1977 of the existence of S21 and Praisar?
I do not know when that office was established.
Well, let me then read to you what you said to investigators of the International Co-Investigating Judge, E3/9477, answer 36. There is a question about traitors and the arrest of cadres, and this is what you said, and let me read it to you. That detention was classified based on the level of serious or minor conviction. Serious conviction prisoners were sent to Office S21 and Praisar. The level of serious conviction referred to high educated persons and those who could speak foreign languages. End of quote. Is this something that you learned of after 1979, or is it something that you knew when you were in Office 560?
I learned about it after 1979, about S21.
So just to be sure, doing your work at Office 560, you were never confronted with Office S21 or Praisar, correct?
In fact, I was aware of Praisar prison. I heard about Praisar prison long time ago. As for S21, I never heard of it at the time.
The distinction between serious conviction or minor conviction, as you call it, is that something that you also heard after 1979?
I learned that In fact, it was said in a meeting that the educated people, as I have told you already, Council, as long as they were considered in the classes of feudalism, capitalism, and petty bourgeoisie, could not avoid the execution. Those who were well educated, and only those who were never educated were kept alive.
Well, let me move on, Mr. Civil Party. One or two last questions before I hand over the floor to my colleague of the Q-Sampan defense team. You spoke about foreign guests that you accompanied, and you also spoke about Chinese visitors. Do you remember any names of members of a Chinese delegation visiting the Northwest Zone?
I do not know other people's name, but I know one name, Lee Yong Chao, who came to visit in Phnom Penh. The Chinese delegation who went to Battambang province were not known by me. I do not know their names, in fact.
Do you know whether this Chinese high-ranking person visited the Trapieng Tama Dam together with Runim?
I do not know about that.
Were you still working in Office 560 when this Chinese delegation came to Phnom Penh?
It appears that I am not quite sure about it.
Right. My final question, Mr. Civil Party. Earlier this morning, you referred to Treng, the place where either Ren or Chun was stationed. What can you tell us about exactly where Treng was situated?
Train was located on road number 10 from Battambang. From Battambang, in fact, it was between 20 and 30 kilometers away from the provincial town. Train was the fort of the army.
Do you know whether there was also a market in Treng?
Back then, are you discussing about the period in the past or the current period? As for regarding the past period, there was no market. Could you clarify your question, please, lawyer, so that I could give you a clearer answer? You are asking me about the market existed in the DK, or what?
No, I think I'm talking about the present-day situation. Let me ask it differently. How far was the military headquarters that you just referred to from where the market is now in Trang?
Mr. Lawyer, could you repeat your question?
Two things. The market in Trang today and the military barracks where Northwest Zone divisions were stationed, Trang. How far are they apart?
To my estimation, it was not far apart from one another. As for the current market at Trang and the headquarters there, and it was not far apart. It is not far apart, Mr. Lawyer.
Would it be accurate if it was about 1 kilometer away, the market and the military barracks?
I could only estimate that it is about correct.
Is there also a forest about 1 kilometer away from Trang Market in 76, 77? Was there a forest at the time 1 kilometer away from Trang Market?
I do not know the exact location of the market there, but there were forests this and there at the time when I went past and saw the forest.
Can you explain how far Sadao is from Trang? Sadao I just mentioned. Coming from Chan Savut's interview, how far is Sadao from Trang?
On my daily trip passing that location, I think that it was not far apart from Sadao to Trang.
And were also military headquarters in 76 in Sadao? Did they exist at the time?
Yes.
And are you able to tell us which division was in Sadao and which division was in Trang?
I can say that at Trang, Rain, who was part of a division, was stationed there, but I cannot tell you which number of the division Rain was part of.
And which military units or division was stationed, if at all, in Sadao?
I do not know about those people at Sadao.
Thank you, Mr. President.
តើនេះផ្ដល់ឱកាសជូនទៅ
President. And the floor is now handed over to the defense team for Mr. Kyo Sompon to have the opportunity to put questions to the civil party. You may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to all of you. Good morning, civil party. My name is Anta Gise, and I am the International Counsel together with Kong Samon for Kyo Sompon, and it is in this capacity that I'm going to put a few complementary questions to you. First of all, I'd like to get back to your appointment as messenger for your father. You said that you obtained this job because your father knew dignitaries, and you mentioned Nunchea, Kyo Sompon, Hunim, etc. So my question is, how did you know that your father had known these people? And could you specify in each case under which circumstances your father got to know these people, if you do know?
I have already testified that my father had lived in Phnom Penh. So Hu Nam, Hu Yun, Kyo Sompon and others were in the list of names, and he obtained he knows these people. He knew these people from that time onward.
I apologize, but when you say that he was part of the list of names, which list are you referring to? And I'd like to specify that my question was, what exact circumstances, under which exact circumstances did they meet? If you don't know, just tell us. But aside from the fact that he lived in Phnom Penh, do you have any other elements that may clarify this?
I have the information, in fact, said the civil party. Regarding Hu Nam, Hu Yun and Kyo Sompon, I saw in 1973 they came to my location once in a while. They came to visit my location once per year. For example, at the time I was living in a location close to Mong, that is Dong Stang Mong. It was also known as An Long Krop Bay, the location where I lived. They brought with them documents and books for me to print so that children could have materials and books for their education. The books about the alphabets, Ko, for example, those books were disseminated to the children who were living in the forest and who were educated there. I saw Hu Nam. Regarding Kyo Sompon, I personally did not meet him in that year.
I apologize. Civil party, I apologize for interrupting you. My question was a little bit different. I understand that you said that you heard about these people, you personally speaking, in 1973, but my question is, and maybe I should read again what you said in your civil party application, document E3/5000, in French, ERN 00807-148, and Khmer 00558-233, English 00793363. And you speak, therefore, about your job as a messenger, and you said that you were receiving foreign visitors, and this is what you said. I was able to access, to obtain this job thanks to my father, who knew, even before the Khmer Rouge regime, que Sampan, Nguyen Chia Hunim, and other leaders, end of quote. So my question is, if you place the period when he met them in 1973 as you said when you heard about these people, or did you meet these people before 1973? And if that is the case, under which circumstances?
I emphasized already that my father had known those people, namely Hu Nam, Hu Yun, and Khieu Samphan, and some others. He knew these people in Phnom Penh in decades 50 and 60. And I have testified for the court once already that he had some jobs to do at the time. And later on, I became a messenger in charge of some tasks. I have already told the court in my application that because my father had known some of those senior people, that I was allowed to become a messenger. I was engaged in the tasks back then, and it was my daily task at the time in the forest from 1970 up to 1975. And then after 1975, I was still engaged in some similar tasks. And I did that. I did all that work until 1977, when I was allegedly accused of betraying the revolution. As a result, I was removed and sent for hard labor, and I was not allowed to eat enough food. I was made to work in the forest in the dark, and also while the rain was coming down, was falling down.
Monsieur la partie civile, j'essaye de poser.
Yes, civil party. I'm trying to put precise questions to you, and you have given a long answer, and I understood from your answer that your father knew the persons that you knew in Phnom Penh because he was in Phnom Penh. I'd like us to talk another point now. You talked about your Uncle Sai. Can you tell the chamber, because I didn't quite understand what you said, can you explain whether your Uncle Sai was your paternal or maternal uncle?
From what I was told by my mother, Uncle Sai was maternal, although he was distant. However, since he had a senior role and responsibility, then I refer to him as a great uncle. And that is in addition to what he was related to my mother.
D'accord, donc c'était.
Very well. So that was a distant relative. Was your uncle working in collaboration with your father?
Yes, they worked together.
Vous-même, vous avez indiqué que
You yourself stated that you were also assigned to the Zone Office 560. Did any other members of your family, apart from your uncle, work in that office? And were there any visits by your father?
Bad.
Yes, there were. There were staff working there. They were also my relatives. They did not hold any particular senior position or responsibilities there, but they lived and worked there. They guarded the place. They cleaned up the place. And then they served guests who came for meetings. As for the family members and relatives of Uncle side and the relatives of my mother, they were living within this vicinity. And by 1977, all these people were taken to Phnom Penh.
vous avez utilisé
You used the term they in the plural without specifying the persons you're referring to. Can you tell us who are you referring to when you say that there were persons working in Office 560 who are in charge of cleaning and welcoming guests? Can you tell us who they were and what were any kinship ties you had with your brother and your uncle and your father? Beg your pardon.
They were my in-laws, they were my elder siblings.
Est-ce que je dois comprendre que vous ne vous souvenez?
Should I understand, therefore, that you no longer recall their names? And if you cannot give the names, can you tell us how many people you are talking of?
There were several people in that location. There were cooks who cooked and prepared food. There were cleaners, and there were guards. And also there were those who worked as for the maintenance. So in total, I could say there were about 20 or over 20 people working there. I can't actually recall their names. And the person who replaced Side was Duan. And subsequently, Duan was removed. That is, when I was transferred, the person was also transferred at the same time.
Excuse me? Excuse me? Mr. Civil Party, I have to listen to you, but I am putting very precise questions to you. I do understand you have a lot to say, but please do at least try to answer my questions because my time is limited, and I've scheduled my examination in order to respect the time allotted to me. A while ago, in answer to a question put to you by Mr. Kope, you talked of a visit by Chinese and Koreans, and you said they were bringing some assistance. Can you tell us what was the purpose of such assistance and what they were doing in your area exactly.
They came to connect the telephone line, to build the railroad, and to work with electrical equipment.
Et est-ce que vous savez qui avait...
And do you know who had issued instructions for them to carry out such work? Was that initiative that of your Uncle Sai, or it came from someone else, if you do know?
No, I don't.
Non, vous ne savez pas, c'est bien ça?
You mean no, you do not know? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Vous avez également évoqué, ça c'était...
You also referred in your written statement, E3/9477, you referred to your work as a messenger, and you also mentioned the kinds of messages you were in charge of, and this is what you stated. So E3/9477, and it is at answer number 12, and the question put to you was as follows. Can you tell us the information found in those reports? Those reports were from districts and cooperatives, and they were subsequently sent to the zones. And this is what you stated, answer number 12. The reports outlined the plan of building canal systems and how much rice was yielded, and the people received food rations of 3 times a day as planned set by the party. Yet in reality, the people did not receive the food rations as outlined in those reports. End of quote. My first question in that regard is as follows. You state that a recommendation was made according to the party plans that the food rations would be 3 meals a day. How did you come by that information?
I learned through meetings at the office and at the unit, as well as learned from the documents that I read, that was the policy of the Communist Party of Cambodia. However, in reality, the practice could not achieve the result as planned, because the rice yield could not be as the same as what was on the piece of paper, and for that reason it could not conform to the policy, and that's what I saw.
Vous dites que ces
You state that those reports refer to the food rations. Does that mean that in the reports that were sent from the cooperatives and the districts to the zones, do you mean that some of those reports were deceitful?
But
in fact, the reports were deceitful because they were afraid that if they could not achieve the work quota as planned by the party, then they would disappear. And the disappearance here means that they could not achieve the work quota as determined by the party, and for that reason they would be considered as weak people or people who were unattentive to the work assigned by the party. Generally speaking, these messages were conveyed through criticism and self-criticism meetings in order to find the shortfalls or the mistakes of those people. And usually such meetings were held every week or every 10 days or every 20 days. And the purpose was to criticize or self-criticize in order to find the weak and the strong points.
Vous avez indiqué également.
You also stated that as part of your duties, you sent those reports to the Central Committee. As a messenger, did you know how to make the distinction between the Central Committee and the Standing Committee?
No, I cannot make that distinction. That is the distinction between the Central Committee and the Standing Committee. My knowledge is based on what I was instructed, for example, to insert the message into the envelope, and then I had to write on the envelope that it is with respect to be sent to 870 committee, and it was my own handwriting on that envelope.
Donc concrètement,
So, in concrete terms, you could decipher code names, but you did not quite know what they referred to. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, 870 was the office of the party center.
okay.
Very well. You stated that you were aware of the arrest of family members, notably your father's family. Can you tell the Chamber when you became aware of those arrests?
In relation to the arrest of members of my father, I became aware of it when I met my nephew named Sarong, who told me about that. I was told about the arrest and about the mistreatment, and subsequently those people died. And I didn't know what happened to them after they had been arrested. And from what I was told, I could feel the pain because my family members and my relatives were arrested and mistreated. And to my knowledge, I only have a surviving nephew who is residing in Thailand. And I lived in Badambong. As for the relatives of my parents, they lived in Kokrolo, and during the regime I was not allowed to make any contact with those people. There was no contact at all.
D'accord, donc je comprends de votre...
Very well. I understand from your answer that you obtained that information after the end of the Democratic Kampuchea regime. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Je voudrais revenir très...
I would like to briefly revisit the three-day meeting which you said you attended and during which Nguyen Chia is alleged to have spoken. Can you tell me whether among the participants at that meeting there were civilians and soldiers? Did I properly understand your testimony that there were civilians and soldiers in attendance at that meeting?
Yes, that is correct. As for those soldiers, they did not wear military uniforms. Those soldiers were considered suspects or were considered enemy of the revolution. And when Nguyen Chi brought us to Phnom Penh, he told us about that, as I testified earlier. That the party brought us to Phnom Penh in order to get out of being persecuted by those treacherous group. And I have already testified to that effect.
Oui, précisément.
Yes, precisely, Mr. Silparty. There are things that you have said, and I don't want you to repeat them. So I'm asking you very precise questions, and please answer them very briefly. Over that period of 3 days, I do understand that there were other speakers whose names you do not recall. Was there a time during those meetings that fighting on the border was talked about during the meeting? Did they talk about the situation on the border?
No, they did not speak about the situation along the border.
Vous avez indiqué qu'il y avait...
You stated that there were about 500 to 600 persons who attended that meeting. Did you know all those people? Did you know where they all came from, or you only knew the provenance of some of them, or only knew only some of them?
Please clarify as to which meeting are you referring to?
Je parle toujours de la...
I'm still talking of the 3-day meeting during which you said you heard Nguyen Chia speak, and you stated that there were about 500 to 600 participants at that meeting. Now, beginning with civilians, do you know where the civilians came from?
They came from the northwest zone, and also to my knowledge, rather generally they all came from the northwest zone and not from any other location.
Et en ce qui concerne les soldats, est-ce...
And as regards the soldiers, do you know to what divisions, companies, and battalions they belong to? If you do not know, please tell us, quite simply.
No, I did not know. I did not know which military division or battalion they came from.
Vous avez ensuite...
You subsequently said that after the meeting, some members of your unit disappeared. My first question is as follows. How many people were in the unit in which you worked after that meeting?
In my unit, there were hundreds of people, although I do not know the exact number, and my estimate could be between 400 to 500 people. Subsequently, people kept disappearing, and later on we were divided into separate groups, and as a result I was transferred to work in Phnom Penh. And in Phnom Penh I was transferred to work near Takao Pagoda or Chayodama Pagoda.
Excuse me, Mr. Civil Party. I really want to insist. My questions are very precise. I don't want you to stray beyond the questions. If the chamber has any additional questions to put to you, they'll do so. I'm trying to cut short my examination in order to respect the time allotted. You have stated that your unit was divided into several groups. Do you know where the other groups were sent or assigned to work subsequently?
Besides digging canals, working in the field and producing fertilizers or tendering cattle, we were reassigned, while others were also reassigned to work elsewhere, and as a result they disappeared. As in my case, I was sent to work in Phnom Penh to work as a construction worker and to work in a hospital.
Je comprends de votre réponse.
I understand from your answer that some people were sent elsewhere and that you didn't know exactly where they were sent to. I insist, Civil Party, that you should answer my questions concisely. The last subject I would like to discuss with you is as follows. Yesterday, you briefly referred to a meeting with Ieng Tirit, and it was yesterday at about 9:59 and 50 seconds in French, and you stated that you held a meeting with Ieng Tirit shortly after the fall of Phnom Penh. I'll read out to you what you said in order not to distort your statement. This is what you stated. Subsequently, towards the end of the regime, that was the time when Phnom Penh was about to fall, Ieng Tirit also invited us to a meeting to talk about the route that we had to use to flee. End of quote. The question with regard to the meeting you have referred to was, on what date was that meeting held?
In December 1978, and at the location which is currently the Council of Ministers, he held a meeting for all staff, including myself, as well as those who were in charge of patients at all hospitals, that we had to evacuate the people to the western direction.
Vous dites décembre.
You say December 1978. Do you remember whether it was after the 15th, before the 15th, or before the 20th? Can you remember more precisely the date?
No, I cannot recall the day.
Mais vous êtes sûr que c'était en décembre?
And are you sure that it was in December 1978?
Through my recollection, that would be the year, because after the meeting, we fled. we fled from Phnom Penh.
Quand vous avez assisté à cette
When you attended that meeting, in what unit were you working and what were your exact duties and responsibilities?
At that time, I was a construction worker at a medicine production factory at P1, which was located near the present office of the Council of Ministers. And we were called to attend a meeting to receive instructions that we had to evacuate as far as possible from Phnom Penh. As for the serious patients, or those who were sick, they would be sent via train to Battambang province. And basically that was the content of that meeting from my recollection.
Et est-ce que vous savez si en décembre...
And do you know whether in December 1978 there were other similar meetings held elsewhere, or you are not aware of that?
Oh, I was not aware of that.
Mr. President, I am done with my questions.
President, thank you, Council. And Mr. Civil Party, as I reminded you yesterday that toward the conclusion of your testimony, you are given an opportunity to make an impact statement in relation to harms you suffered and which led you to become a civil party. Or if you have any questions that you would like to put to the accused, you may do so by putting those questions to the accused through me, the President of the Chamber. Civil Party. First of all, allow me to say good morning to Your Honors and everyone. Today, I am honored that I am allowed to make an impact statement in relation to harms I suffered through democratic Cambodia, and that I am allowed to put the questions to Mr. Nguyen Chia, and I have one question to put to him. My question is as follows. Regarding the killing and the mistreatment of 7 million people, although the number of deaths differs, ranges between 3 million to 1.5 million, what is your responsibility for that? Or do you think that the foreigners should take a responsibility for that? And that is all my question. As for my impact statement, everything is beyond words. I do not know how to describe in words of my hardship. It's beyond imagination. And I cannot take it. I cannot accept it. I lived in a very difficult situation. I was separated from my parents, siblings, and relatives, and I have nowhere to live. And at this point in time, I have nothing. I don't receive any education. I don't have any plot of land so that I could live in and survive. I have never told anyone about what is inside my heart. I do not have anything else to add to what I have just spoken of, since nothing can be described in words. At present, I live in a status which is lower than animals, and that's a result of what happened during the regime. And I am thankful that I'm allowed to make this statement of harm and suffering. President, the Chamber wishes to inform you, Mr. Civil Party, that in the proceedings in case 002/02, from the outset, Mr. Nguyen Chie, the accused, informs the Chamber that he exercises his rights to remain silent and not to respond to questions. And on the 8th of January 2015, in response to the question of the Chamber, the co-accused reaffirmed his position to exercise the rights to remain silent. And so far, the Chamber has not been informed about any change in status, so that he would respond to a question. And pursuant to the existing domestic and international laws, the Chamber has no right to compel the accused to respond to questions by the party or by the bench. Mr. Civil Party, the Chamber is grateful of your presence, as well as your testimony and the statement of harm and suffering that you claim you suffered during democratic Cambodia. It is now concluded, and your testimony may contribute to the ascertainment of the truth in this case. You are no longer required to be present in the courtroom, and for that reason you may return to your residence or wherever you wish to go to, and we wish you all the very best. Court officer, please work with Visu to make transport arrangement for this civil party to return to his residence or wherever he wishes to go to. It is now time for the adjournment, and we will resume at 1:30 this afternoon to continue our proceedings. For the afternoon sessions, we'll continue to hear the remaining testimony of witness Thuc Sitorn from France via video link. Security personnel, you are instructed to take Khe Sampon to the waiting room downstairs and having returned to attend the proceedings this afternoon before 1:30. The court stands in recess.